let's get into Brotherhood Letter. That's what brought you here. We're going to talk more about the thing that a lot of ordeal members are actually have a fear of. Once you get past that, they don't have to do the ordeal again, and they're going to eat, and they can talk, and all these things that they did during ordeal. They need to come and finish their membership with Brotherhood. Brotherhood gives you the little red bar on the ends of the arrow. That's the neat thing, and there's stuff about that, but we're not going to discuss it here because this is an open forum. Okay, but the neat thing about it is that they go through a process with Brotherhood where they learn about all of the symbols that went on, all the symbology that went on in their ordeal, and how that relates to their brotherhood. So, and it's classes, basically. It's classes. You get to eat, you get to talk. I mean, it's just it's a great time. So if you're an ordeal member, make sure you finish your obligation to become an ordeal, to go through the ordeal, and then to finish your obligation and become a brotherhood. So that's very important. Now, I'll say this again. You never have to repeat your ordeal. Your ordeal is only one time. You only do it once. Once you've gone through that, then it's a matter of understanding it. Okay? Now, there are things called oligomats, which are examples. These are Brotherhood members that go through that process, and they are the example. They are the helping hand during the ordeal to get you through that process. So the thing about scouting is we believe in being friendly, okay, and courteous and kind, okay? So that's the neat thing about the oligomat program. That is there, and it's optional. No one is forced to do that. Okay, that's an option to get into that. There is a video on that. I will make a point to put it up there. But look into that as far as oligomat service. Understanding your ordeal and all of the things that went on during that is very important. And in filling out all of the blanks within the program. This is so that when you say the obligation, when you repeat that, it really starts to make a lot of sense. So when you give service back to the unit, whether it be a troop, a crew, or a ship, that's one of those things. You're giving service of yourself to others. And that's living up to the Scout Oath, to help others at all times. That's huge, okay? And understanding this entire process is critical to understanding the order of the arrow. Now, when you get into the actual process of brotherhood, one of the things that is going to come up is a letter that the arrowman, the ordeal arrowman, needs to write. And what that actually covers, there are three major parts. The first one is to explain what you think the obligations in the order of the arrow mean to you. The second thing is to describe how you are planning on fulfilling your obligation to scouting, to your troop, to your fellow scouts, to your community, to your family, how that obligation carries through for the rest of your life. And finally, the third thing is that you need to develop or commit to some goals to give service to your unit and to others and your community. Now, this would also include the lodge, the chapter. Many lodges are really big and they have all these chapters. So the chapter that you're in, that you're involved in, you need to give service to them too. And that can be as simple as conveying information from the chapter back to the unit, to the troop, the crew, the different the ship. All of that stuff. That's very important. Now, this letter is usually written by hand at the actual Brotherhood weekend. So have some ideas when you go there of things you want to put in this letter. Have some notes. That's very important so that you don't forget anything. Now, they're there to help and mentor you too. So if you're having difficulties or can't really articulate your ideas, they're there to help. Okay? They're there for service. They're there to help you. So don't worry, okay? They will help you through that process. Brotherhood is huge. This is where your membership solidifies, okay? It's where it all comes together. This is where the ordeal and the Brotherhood make the Order of the Arrow. That's the beautiful thing about Brotherhood and this letter. It's huge. Do not try to get out of it, okay? This is a huge thing. Let's just get it done. And a lot of times there are no wrong answers, okay? So don't get upset, okay? Just fill out what you can and get their advice and commit. That's the one thing they really want you to do, is commit to give service to others. And that's the big thing in the order. You know that. So with that, as adults, we go through that same process as the youth for Brotherhood, okay? And it's a great ceremony. I mean, it's a wonderful ceremony. So that's the neat thing about it. Definitely do this. This is something, as adults, we need to set the example, right? So if you're just an ordeal member, please, you need to be a Brotherhood member, a full member, okay? The whole thing. Now, you get all the benefits for both, but still, the thing about it is, be that example. And I know you're a good example. So complete your membership. Get your Brotherhood done. And that letter shouldn't hold anyone back. Want to talk a little bit about collecting patches in the Order of the Arrow. You do not need to be a member of the Order of the Arrow to collect the patches. Totally fine. You could be out of the country even. That's totally fine. You do not have to be a member of the Order of the Arrow. Now, you do have to be a member if you plan on wearing those patches. But to collect them and trade them and do all those things, that you do not have to be member, okay? It makes it a little easier to understand, and we'll get into some of that, but it does help. But as far as OA pad, I've got them all laying out here, and oh my goodness, there's a bunch of different ones. But before we get... Now, the very first thing that you see on most uniforms of an OA members is the flap. Oh, it's over here. I moved it. The flap. The flap represents your lodge. And a lot of events, when they do the different patches, at the lodge level, they'll have different kinds. They'll have celebrations of all different kinds. Look at all the ones I've collected. I have collected a whole bunch of different ones. There are old ones and new ones and different stuff, okay? That's the neat thing. When you go to events with OA, like NOAC or something, we do flap for flap. That means you've come with a bunch of your lodge's flaps. And what's neat is you go and trade one for one. that's the neat thing. It's a great way to meet scouts from all over the world, or excuse me, all over the nation. That's the nice thing about flap for flap. And one of the other things that I've noticed too is that a lot of times scouts will sign the back and put the area that they're in, like Cincinnati, Ohio, or something like that on the back of the flap. That's something they've done. That was true at a lot of the NOACs. They were doing that. So that's a wonderful, wonderful thing, and it's a great way to trade patches very conveniently. And you can, all these are like memories. You can put them in a nice frame and stuff of all the people you met at that event. Now, another big one that they do is your lodge's events. For instance, in, I believe it was 2014, there was a series of patches that the Tipasaw Lodge did, and it was absolutely gorgeous. And the very first one was this one, which was some blue jays. It was all birds. That was the neat thing about it. Then the different events they did. In fact, that blue jay one was for Conclave that we did there with the lodge. Then they had the flamingo, which was a very popular one in that time. That was service weekend. And then, of course, we had, this one was gorgeous. This was the, this was the Ordeal weekend, which had the Cardinal. Check that out. Beautiful patches. Absolutely beautiful patches. Then, of course, they had a staff weekend for the Tino, which is a big thing that they do with our lodge. And this was the staff patch at that time. And it's even got a little bird with a little beak on it and stuff. It's all cut edge. Gorgeous patches. Absolutely gorgeous. And then, of course, the annual patch, which was like a big back patch. It's just absolutely... It's a great set. You can put this in a set with all those different patches around it. You can put it on a blanket, okay? These are the things that people, they see this, and they go crazy about it. This Audubon series with the birds was very popular that particular year. Now, your lodge has the events also. So you need to be able to say, hey, mine's got this annual patch, and it's a theme. It could be Native Americans. It could be buildings. We've had that. We've had bugs, because bugs are real popular, especially with the youth. We've had different designs. We've had fish, different kinds of fish. We've had dinosaurs. I mean... It is amazing, okay? So when you're collecting, you want to collect the stuff you know, the stuff you've either been to or know about, okay? That's with that lodge. That's the important thing when you're collecting. Now, every lodge is divided up into chapters. Now, sometimes there's only 2 chapters, okay? Sometimes there's 14, 15, 18 chapters. So depending on the size of your lodge will depend on how many chapters there are. The chapters have all different themes that you could think of. One of my favorites is Huracan. Huracan was one that that was, when I was an advisor, was actually split off from another chapter. That was a big one, and this was a beautiful dangle that had all the different shiny Huracan logo and everything on it. Of course, when I was advisor, I was part of the Tosahatchee, which was the Tosahatchee chapter, and we had our own chapter patch. So these are chapters of the Tipasaw Lodge. Unfortunately, this is no longer around, so this is very collectible. A lot of people want this patch because it is amazing. It's a hot needle where it's actually been cut along the edge. There's no rolled edge per se. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful, and it glows in the dark. That was a big deal. So chapter patches are one of those things that when you start collecting a particular lodge, you want all the chapter patches too. And they change all the time. So you got to keep in mind that these things are going on. You want to make sure that you're able to stay ahead of that curve. Now, NOAC, the National Order of the Arrow Conference, is held every 3 or 4 years. And it varies depending on what year, and you got to look into it. But typically, they'll have a contingent from every single lodge represented at NOAC. Now, a lot of times they will come up with a theme. That represents either the area or something to do with the lodge, okay? And it will vary. It depends on what it is. In 2012, I was the advisor for a contingent going to NOAC, and we came up with our own patches. It was all based on a shark and a surfer on that logo. It was amazing, okay? In fact, when 2015, we had a contingent I was associate advisor for, and this was the patch that we had. This particular one was Timmy Tipasaw was riding a turtle. The turtle, the dangle underneath, and this together, there we go, boop. That gave the full illusion of that particular patch. Okay. Now I don't know if you can see a lot of this stuff on the video, but that's kind of what's going on there. But that was a very popular thing, and they had dingles and dangles and all the different stuff, and you name it. They can do a lot of different things. So if you're collecting this stuff, you want all of it. You want the whole set. So that's very important to obtain. And there's other types of things that the lodge could be involved in. A lot of times when the jamboree comes along, the contingent will have a set. And a lot of times the set will have CSPs. Okay, and by the way, if I'm using terms you're not familiar with, you need to see the patch crazy. I'll put it up there, put it in the little thing there. See that video, it'll tell you a little bit about these terms. But the CSPs, the council strips, would, at a jamboree, they would have their theme, and then each one would be the different troops that they're sending. Okay, some of the big councils will send several troops, so they'll have all the different patches for each one of each troop that they're going to be sending to the jamboree. And what's really cool, this is the cool bit, they always have a flap for that lodge, for that council. So that's something to think about. Some councils are so big they have multiple lodges. So there are some that are small that might use a lodge that's in 2 different areas. So, you got to know where your area is and what you're collecting. There are so many different patches, and they do different things for different events and whatever's going on. Those are the patches that are out there. There are collectible sashes that a lot of people will wear to these events. So that's another thing. Sometimes they will even get them autographed from famous OA or scouting professionals. They'll get them autographed. So that's another type of collecting that can go on. But that is one of the big things that is out there in the collecting world. And what's beautiful about this is that it doesn't cost a lot. It is something that sometimes is included in the fees going to these events. It's actually part of it. And what's nice about it is that you can bring them back and lay them out, and people can look at them and ask questions about your. Now, a lot of chapters have difficulty in attracting youth to come to their monthly meetings. These meetings can vary, and they can be at different places. And we're going to go through 3 different things that advisors and chapter chiefs can do to really maximize their meetings. These are very important points, and I know this from experience, being in the OA, being a former advisor to 3 different chapter chiefs. They all had their different styles, and we've talked about that, and this is something that I have developed. It's 3 simple things. The first one is no boring meetings. Okay? Meetings, youth do not come and respond well to boring meetings. They might put up with it for a little while, but they're not going to come back. So it's got to have substance. It's got to have something that interests them. Okay? So no boring meetings. Make sure that there's no boring meetings. I know you have to go over the talking points within a meeting. You know, what's coming up, what's going on in the order of the arrow, the events, that kind of stuff. Go through that quickly. Make it 10 minutes max. That's it. Try to get the youth to review that very quickly. Also, everything that's said in a youth meeting it goes in one ear and out the other. Okay? So write it down, put it on a piece of paper, and hand it out to everyone. Okay? All that information. So you don't have to go on for 20 minutes or 40 minutes about stuff that you can just read off in 10 minutes and be done. Make sure that every meeting has an activity, a game, something that either develops fellowship within the youth or something that's challenging. This is something that can be very exciting, and there are tons of materials out there to refer to. As an advisor, I highly recommend getting some information prior to the meeting and getting it to the chief, so that the chief could go through all of the options and make sure that they're ready to have a good activity or game, something of that nature, to go along with the meeting. Now, another big part of the meeting is including the parents. The parents should not be excluded from a chapter meeting. Parents are just as involved, just as important as the members of the chapter. They are the transportation. They are the ones who come up with great ideas. And the advisory group, the adults, need to work with them to make sure that everything is running smoothly and to their satisfaction. Believe me, if a parent is not happy, they're not going to bring their youth to the chapter meeting. Now that brings us to another big point. The use of transportation, or the convenience of transportation of the youth members of the chapter to different activities, whether it be going to the fall fellowship or going into the spring conclaves or any of that stuff. You need the parents' involvement. They've got to transport their youth to those things. Also the meeting. A lot of times meetings in a chapter are done at roundtable. Now this is really because they want parents to come to roundtable to do the roundtable stuff, but to also transport their youth that are part of the OA to the OA meeting. So they have both going on at the same time. Now, if sounds a little confusing, and I admit it might be, there's a big difference between a chapter and the lodge. I did a video, it's up there, and definitely check that out. That will explain the difference between what is a chapter, what is the lodge, the differences. So check that out as soon as you can. Now, with the order of the arrow, the chapter meetings typically are done at roundtable. Okay, it might be a powwow where you are. There's different names for it, but it's a monthly meeting of all of the adult leaders. They will have a room set aside. Of course, it's 2 deep leadership, of course. And the youth go off and have their meeting. Now, typically, it's not at the same time as the roundtable. Most successful roundtables use the youth that are there for a flag ceremony at the beginning. They might do that. They might also run an OA grill as a fundraiser. Going to NOAC is expensive. Going to activities out of state are expensive. So raising funds through the chapter, through this kind of thing, can be very easily done. Typically, the meeting for the youth is done, say, 30 minutes later. It gives it time to clean up the OA grill or the cafe, and it also gives it time to do the different things that they need to do within Roundtable. So that's kind of how they organize it all. Now, typically that meeting is about an hour, and that's it. Very short at the beginning so that there's no boredom going on, and of course then the activities and games that go on to build fellowship within the chapter. These are great things. These are wonderful meetings, and it's an opportunity for the youth to really lead something that's fun, entertaining. The adults might get a kick out of watching some of the activities that they do. It's kind of fun, and of course the youth learn from it. And not only learn, but they also get excited about going to the meeting. So this is something you can build up. You can build up over time. It's not always a home run. This is youth-led. So the advisors need to give the tools to the youth to really make the whole thing come together. Now, another great exciting thing is that it doesn't always have to be at the same time and at the same location. It's great that you can help out at Roundtable. It's great that you can do those things. You can do those things and then have the meeting at another location, say a bowling alley. Okay, that's a great activity for youth. It's a great way to work as a team. Those are wonderful opportunities. What about miniature golf? There are tons of activities out there in your area that you need to think outside of the box. You need to make this exciting for youth to be involved in. So, and if you can do the three big things, this really will energize your chapter. It will grow. It will be more camaraderie within the group. There will be more brotherhood going on. This is something that the Order of the Arrow does. And these are all the older scouts. So we're not talking, basic scout skills, okay? We don't have to do that. Done that already. These are the older scouts, and they're having more fun, more activities. So to sum it all up, do not have a boring meeting. That's very, very important. Make sure the youth know to keep it lively. Every single one, all 12 of them, if they're having a monthly meeting, all 12 of those should be active, doing something, going outside, doing activities, planning. Those are wonderful things to kind of get the ball rolling. And the more active your chapter, the healthier your OA is to give service throughout your community. So keep that in mind. No boring meetings, okay? A boring meeting will make scouts and brothers run for the exit, okay? So, and that's true for troops too. So this is good training for your leadership. Keep it going. Also, make sure that it's at a convenient location so that you can take advantage of that transportation from the parents. Very important. Youth don't really think about that, but we as leaders do. And we need to make sure that they're aware. So that's one of the big keys. And always think outside of the box of a meeting. You can think outside. There are other things that can be done. You could easily go to a golfing center. You can go on a field trip. There are so many things you could do. Think outside that box. That's something that adult leaders do, and then try to convey that to the youth, to the chapter chief. Make sure that they know that these things are available. You just got to plan them and do them. It's that simple. And you do so much for scouting. So I really, really do appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing you on the trail.